Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining in from. Welcome to today's webinar with the World Resource Forum and the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. My name is Beth Barodi, and I am your moderator and host today for our panel discussion. And I work with IRMA as one of the mining sector leads. And today's panel is really focused around shared governance and how a shared governance model in the standard space can help promote more responsible sourcing across the board. IRMA in itself is an equal governance model of a standard, and we are housed by 6 different houses, which today we are really fortunate to have 5 of those 6 houses with us today. So IRMA was built for and by and individuals and members from our purchasing sector, our mining sector, our investment sector, our affected communities, our NGO, and our labor space. And I do want to recognize that today we do not have someone from our labor house joining us. And so we do know that that is a bit of a missing voice from us today, but we are really happy to be able to have the other 5 houses join us. So I would just like to welcome the additional panelists here. So we have Thea Parson from Mighty Earth, who is joining us. We have Camille Barret from Mirova, joining from our investment house. We have Petra Pedersen from our purchasing house from Polestar, and we have Stefan De Bruin from SQM from our mining house, and we have Pavel Sulianziga from our affected community house. And today we will be having a discussion around why shared governance matters and the perspectives from each of these individuals and their organizations and how that relates to IRMA. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. You will see down in the bottom of your screen, you will have the option to turn on your interpretation. There is a more button with 3 little dots. We do have simultaneous translation between English and Russian happening today. So to ensure that you are able to listen to the insights Pavel is able to share with us, please click and make sure that you are on the English channel. We are also recording this session, and so it will be uploaded to the World Resource Forum YouTube channel so that you are able to share and watch this presentation after the fact. And we will be using the Q&A function. So any individuals who are joining us, if you have questions throughout, please feel free to put your questions in that box. We will be moderating it, and we will have time at the end for questions and answers. So before we kick off with questions, I'm going to give it over to each of our panelists to just give a 2-minute introduction of themselves and the organizations they are with. And so Thea, I will start with you for an introduction.
Thanks, Beth, and thank you everyone for organizing this panel today. My name's Thea Parson. I'm a senior associate on our forest commodities team at Mighty Earth. Mighty Earth is an international environmental organization which is working to decarbonize heavy industry and to end deforestation and environmental and human rights issues which are related to the agricultural industries, but also the extractive sector, which is obviously more relevant to the discussion today. We carry out research, supply chain analysis. We use satellite imagery to monitor ongoing deforestation and work closely with civil society and communities that are based in areas that are impacted by the extractive industry. And we're trying to work to drive positive changes across those industries and drive real shifts across the sectors.
Thank you. Camille, can I give it to you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm very grateful to be here today. My name is Camille Barret. I am an impact and ESG specialist within Mirova, covering different sectors, but notably the mining sector, which is why we're here today. Mirova is an asset management company, responsible one, notably headquartered in Paris, but I am based in Singapore. If everybody is familiar with the SFDR, the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, all of our funds are Article 9, which means we have to demonstrate a positive impact within every companies, but also projects, because we are both on the listed and private markets, a positive impact. And that's why we're here today. We've been a part of the IRMA finance group, because it's important to demonstrate in hard to abate sectors for this transition all the positive impact that is possible. It's not always easy, and there's not many standards out there. So that's why we are very happy to be able to discuss about this and how investors look at responsible mining.
Thank you. Petra.
Yes, hello, my name is Petra Pettersson. I come from Polestar. Polestar is an EV car brand focusing on moving to sustainable mobility. We're quite newly funded company. We have 3 car lineup on the market today, which is purely EV brands as we move to green mobility. Our focus area are 4. It's inclusion, transparency, climate, and circularity. I work as inclusion lead, which is mainly focusing on human rights aspects in the automotive industry. But IRMA supports all our 4 focus areas, so we're really happy to be part of IRMA initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Pavel.
Всем здравствуйте, спасибо большое.
Hello to everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Pavel Solonziga. I represent the UDG people, which is indigenous people of Siberia. Unfortunately, right now, I have to live in asylum. It's political asylum. I am in the United States now. I founded the organization that helps indigenous peoples around the world. It's called the Batani Foundation. And first, it was created in Russia in 2014, and we were helping communities around the Russian Federation to negotiate with businesses to make sure that their interests are also represented when businesses come to their territories. Unfortunately, we were recognized as undesirable organization in 2016. And we had several of our staff members had to leave the country. And now we have recreated this organization within the United States and continue working globally. We continue nowadays to help indigenous communities around the world, including to promote their interests when it comes to businesses coming to their territories. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pavel. And thank you, Victoria, who is doing all the simultaneous translation for us on their behalf. It's always helpful to have her. And last but not least, Stefan, I will hand it to you.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you for the opportunity to be there. It's great to have these multi-stakeholder dialogues. I think they're really very, very important. So I work since 2005 in SQM. I have the luck to have been able to sell lithium to Asia since 2005 till 2018. But then since 2020, I'm focusing on stakeholder engagement. But it means I understand the market, and it always helps for discussions to provide additional background. Very quickly on SQM. SQM is the biggest lithium producer in the world. It's a Chilean company, but we are also listed on the New York Stock Exchange. SQM is also the leading producer of iodine, which is fundamental for human health and technologies, and then also the leading producer of natural potassium nitrate, which is a specialty plant nutrient or fertilizer. And interestingly, both the potassium and the lithium come from the salar. So the salar is really important to us. And then maybe final point to mention here is that we are an operator. We're not the owner of our lithium concession. So it's a state-owned concession. And so we are working under a lease agreement with the Chilean government to operate on the salar. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we start diving into questions, one of the things that I wanted to highlight first as IRMA, when we were thinking about putting this panel together and we're working with the World Resource Forum, we knew that we wanted to talk about shared governance. We knew we wanted to talk about what that meant for how IRMA is implemented and received among the different houses. And we thought instead of us answering it ourselves as IRMA, we really wanted to make sure that we had the diverse voices of members who make up our organization. And so that is why we have decided to take this approach to our panel and have these 5 panelists with us today. And I think one of the first questions, Stefan, just because you just mentioned how you just went from going from the market side to the community engagement side, I want to ask the first question to you around how you have seen IRMA improve your community relations and how the equal governance model really provides more credibility when it comes to stakeholder management and engagement for SQM.
So I cannot speak for our local communities, so I will comment on my perception from outside of Chile. Is always incredibly complex, and so there's no simple solutions, and everything takes time and takes commitment. So that is, I think, before everything else, really, really important. I think when indigenous communities are confronted with industrial activities or mining activities in the area where they live or on their lands, we have to take on board
предприятия начинают работу на их территориях, то нам приходится
is right, but is very outside of what they are used to deal with or to do or to be actively involved in. So that creates, I think, immediately the challenge of achieving horizontality, which is an ongoing really priority to keep thinking, is this horizontal or not? So where does that tie in IRMA is that communities have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, a lot of doubts. And so to try to tackle that, you need dialogue. But to achieve a horizontal dialogue, very often communities say, you're a nice person and you can tell me anything you want. But fundamentally here, I need to have external validation. And so to start that dialogue, where I think really IRMA is transformational is that it's very, very broad, it's very, very robust. You map everything out, and then there is an independent assessment, and communities can agree or disagree with that assessment.
Забирай и выходи оттуда, Таги.
I didn't get the translation for that, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, no worries. No worries. So when you have an IRMA audit, first of all, it's a process where communities are involved if they choose to do so, and it's something which is carried or supported by the wider value chain. So that is, I think, very important points. But what it does is that it shows. So we want to be the best lithium miner in the world. That's our ambition. But how do you quantify that, and how do you make that transparent? And how can then from that how can you build a dialogue? And so what I think where IRMA is really fundamental is that you create an overview. It's very broad, and it shows where a company is or not, and what is then the action to be followed and the process that comes from there. And so it's important where you are, because at that point, communities have an independent assessment if they choose to accept that, because that's their option. But then everything, I think, becomes more, I don't know the right word, maybe fluid, because communities see, okay, this is a big commitment on behalf of the mining company. The mining company is doing that work, is trying to be transparent. It has an external validation, independent. So it means I have I can have more trust in it. But then you also know, okay, maybe they are concerned on a specific aspect operation. As a company, you can be very good or very bad compared to the standard. So immediately you know what are really the topics, the hard nuts to crack. And so you can really focus the discussions to get to those really tough points, and maybe not spend more time than necessary on points which are already covered. And we need to make sure that communities are confidently assured of that. So I think that's, for me, what is most important. But it's a step in a long process, which is ongoing. And it's not a magical solution, but it's really very, very essential.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. And I think one of the benefits of IRMA, again, from having this, the shared governance model, is that we do have a house that is dedicated to affected communities and Indigenous community groups. And so, Pavel, having heard this from Stefan, what do you believe is the benefit for communities to be able to have an equal voice in the IRMA standard? And why is that so important for the mining industry right now?
Да, спасибо большое.
Yes,
Вообще я
thank you.
начну со
I will
своего личного
begin
опыта.
maybe
Я
with my
вообще начал
own
заниматься
experience.
политической работой, защитой
I
прав своего
began my
народа,
political
именно
work
потому, что
by
земли
advocating
моего
for the rights
народа
of my own people,
продали, правительство
because
продало южнокорейской
a
компании
large
Hyundai.
territory that
И
previously was
мы
the
хорошо
territory of the
предполагали, что в
Udige
случае,
people in Russia
если
was sold
Hyundai
by the
начнет
Russian
работать на нашу
Federation to
территорию, то
Hyundai,
наша
the
территория
Korean
будет
company.
подрублена.
And we
Поэтому
realized that
я
if they start
начал
harvesting
заниматься
forests on
проблемой,
our
потом
territory, our
нашу территорию
forests are
начали
going to be
продавать другим
gone.
компаниям, другие
Um,
компании хотели
and
работать на нашей
in
территории,
addition to that,
добывать
other
золото,
sections of other
лес,
territories were
уголь и так
subsequently
далее. И
being
те
negotiated
опыт у меня
for
общения
to be
с
sold
промышленными
to other
компаниями был
companies.
очень негативный.
So we had
Было
a
видно, что и власти,
very
и
negative
компании
experience
относятся
with the state,
коренному народу,
trying to
к
communicate
нашей
to the state
общине,
and to
что в
these
большей
companies
степени мы
specifically
являемся
that
средством, да,
that
для
our
реализации плана
forests
стратегического
are
развития, для
very
добычи
important to
природных
our
ресурсов и так
livelihoods.
далее. И поэтому, конечно,
And
это все было
of
очень
course,
сложно. И
the
было видно,
interests
что
collided here, and the
они
negotiations were
начинают
very
предлагать
difficult.
какие-то блага то тебе лично, то
And
общине. При
in
этом
response, the companies
очень часто, к
were
сожалению,
offering
обманывают и так далее.
some
Поэтому вот мой первый опыт
some
был очень
benefits,
негативный.
economic benefits
И
to the
когда я впервые
communities,
попал на прибой
and
ТВО в
sometimes they also lied to the
90-х годов, как
communities.
рассказывал об этой ситуации,
In the
я
90s,
сказал,
when
что
I was speaking
я
from the
никогда не
UN
сяду за стол
podium,
переговоров с бизнесом,
at
потому
that point, I
что
was so
коренные
frustrated that I said globally that if I ever negotiate directly with companies, I will never sign an agreement.
первых лидеров коренных народов в Сибири, который
But
подписал
a few
соглашение
years
о
down the road,
взаимодействии
I
с
was the first leader of indigenous peoples in Siberia who signed an agreement with a large corporation that came to work on the territories of my people. And this evolution in my view of businesses basically showed to me that it is possible to negotiate, it is possible to come to agreements with corporations, and it is possible respectfully to come to a mutual benefit from the work. We first of all, basically demanded that there would be environmental analysis done, and the analysis would be done by an independent entity, and these the company at the time that we negotiated with, they accepted that, and we were very afraid that the company could maybe bribe that somebody who would be doing this evaluation, and we actually we actually recommended and demanded that the company that would do the environmental analysis would be actually the one chosen by us or recommended by us. And they agreed. We saw that they were not playing games with us, that they were honest in the process of these negotiations, and they were honest about the issues that would arise on our territories as a result of their operations. And this back and forth, I think, really highlighted for me the necessity of dialogue. I think IRMA is actually that platform that allows for an honest and deep dialogue between large corporations, mining companies in general, whatever they are, and indigenous communities and places where they are located. And we for us, in that regard, to have our own voice represented inside the IRMA governance system is incredibly important, because here we can state what we need and what is important to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavel. I think it is that piece of having that dialogue that is so crucial when it comes to accountability and transparency for companies, and for communities to have that confidence that they have equal participation in a project. Petra, I'm going to come to you from the purchasing side. When you are looking at gathering information from your upstream suppliers and looking for that transparency and accountability, why did Polestar decide that IRMA was the right platform to be able to use when looking for accountability with your materials that you are sourcing?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, it's a really complex matter. We've obviously realized that mining and minerals is a high-risk sector, and it's very far down our supply chains. But we started realizing that we cannot do this on our own. So we recognize that these complex matters really requires multilateral collaborations, and therefore we started assessing. Well, we understand that we need to conduct credible third-party audits to verify the issues of human rights and environmental management. And we started assessing several different audit protocols. And IRMA was definitely one of the most transparent one. It was easy to assess for us. And therefore, it's also a preferred audit standard for us. And that's where we decided to join forces with IRMA and become a member. So we assessed IRMA on and other audits and initiatives as well on a few key protocols or issues. And first of all, we thought that they needed to be able to manage fundamental principles of human rights and proper environmental management. And IRMA kind of ticked the boxes for how they control and check like child labor, forced labor, also the respect to indigenous people's rights, which is really, really hard to find a protocol that is managing all those types of issues. But then again, when it comes to management as well, they really offer, or you at the IRMA offer that kind of credibility by being an independent third-party assessment audit protocol. So we also really appreciate this kind of equity with regards to multi-stakeholder governance that gives that kind of higher credibility. Like previous speakers have said, that they've been part of the developing the protocol, giving feedback to the protocol, which makes it really relevant then for the mining sector as well, and that type of credibility. We also believe that it reduces burdens. We know that there are other protocols that are being used, or we can develop our own protocols, but we believe that it creates audit fatigue. So it's really good if we can join forces in multi-stakeholder initiatives in order to reduce that kind of audit burden for companies. Now, they know what to assess for, it's transparent, it can be shared between several stakeholders, and we can have that kind of collaborative collaboration between the different stakeholders and tiers in the supply chain as well. The tiers is obviously very complicated for us because Normally mining is 5 to 7 years away from us, but an important issue is that kind of transparent way of sharing your results. So we can go into IRMA's website, we can look at the SQM's result, we can download SQM's audit reports, and that really helps us assess the sourcing of our minerals in our trade supply chain. So yeah, it really helps us, and specifically as a tool to gain insights of our own trade supply chain.
Thank you. It is a benefit of the reports that we have, and we often hear from companies who have undergone the IRMA audits, is the reports are very robust. These are not, 10, 15-page reports that come out at the end of an audit process. These are hundreds and hundreds of pages of detail and of the different level within each of our chapters and the indicators that we have, really showcasing that evidence and that transparency and building the narrative of performance for a mine. And so, Thea, I'm going to come to you, working with Mighty Earth and the work that you are doing on the civil society side. When you see these reports and you see that level of transparency that is within them, how do you see IRMA as supporting the work that you're doing at Mighty Earth? And how do you see the CSO, the civil society sector, being able to influence the mining sector through initiatives like IRMA?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Beth. I think maybe just to start with a reflection on some of the other industries that Mighty Earth has been working on, and the different interventions that we've seen of varying successes. I think voluntary sustainability standards have been used across the palm oil sector, soy, cocoa, timber, to address environmental and human rights issues and concerns across those global supply chains. Some have delivered real improvements and others have fallen short. And I think that's because they've lacked that legitimacy or transparency, which IRMA definitely has due to its shared governance mechanism. And the fact that each of the 6 houses are part of building the requirements for the IRMA audit procedure, and the breadth and the depth of that audit procedure and the third-party verification of that is essential in creating that legitimacy and avoiding things like greenwashing and really getting to the heart of the problems that are within the extractive sector. I think Petra has mentioned that the minerals and mining sector does have a lot of risk. Mighty Earth is working closely with the nickel mining industry. We've been following the developments over the last 2 years of the growth of that industry, particularly within Indonesia, which is the largest producer of nickel in the world. And there are a lot of issues on the environmental side, issues linked to poor waste management, deforestation, poor tailings disposals. And then on the human rights side, lack of consultation with communities, and often really catastrophic health impacts, and often fatal health impacts on communities if the mining companies aren't going through the correct procedure of free, prior and informed consent and due diligence procedures in their operations. And so seeing how IRMA's kind of learned from some of these other standards, I think, and seen some of the mistakes and some of the more positive elements of those standards and carried them into IRMA along with the consultation. And I think the word dialogue, which Stefan and Pavel keep referring to, which I think is essential to building a strong standard. And that's really, I think, shines a kind of a positive light on the future of how we can improve the extractive sector. I think we're still kind of seeing some of those results emerging. It's great to see that there's some bigger mining companies that are going through the IRMA process, and also the downstream users that are really asking that of their suppliers. And already the start of that process, having to consult with communities, is already a really big improvement of what has been happening in the past in what is quite an untransparent sector, and a sector with, I think, a lot of problems to address. But just beginning that IRMA process and beginning those consultations and dialogue with communities is really essential. And I think the next step on that is definitely transparency. It's something that we always talk about in terms of if we want to see true change in a sector, there needs to be transparency and accountability. And I know that through the IRMA process and releasing those reports after a company has gone through the IRMA process, as well as the corrective action plans, is really essential to driving that change, and for all of the stakeholders within the supply chain and sitting around the table can hold the companies accountable for making those positive changes and addressing risks in their supply chains, and ultimately addressing any issues with communities and particularly Indigenous peoples that are so often affected by the operations of mining companies. So I think looking forward, it would be really great to see more downstream users, particularly within the auto sector, to be asking for their suppliers and stakeholders within their supply chains to be going through that IRMA process.
I mean, it's no surprise coming off of that point that the largest house that we have in IRMA right now with the most members is actually that downstream customer, that house. And we really are seeing a lot of those pressures for companies coming into IRMA, coming from both the downstream customers as well as our investors in the finance house. And we do see a lot of that influence being brought to the table right now. And so, Camille, from your perspective, coming from an asset management company and looking at IRMA, what role do investors play in helping to promote responsible sourcing and through supply chains?
Not to sound like a broken record, I think a lot. And I think the keywords are going to keep coming back from all the persons that have mentioned before. And I think it's good because that means we're all on the same page. But the way we see it as investors, we're kind of catalysts in driving adoption of responsible sourcing practices, notably because we invest both in the extractive sector, but both also on all different other sectors that have in their downstream and their purchasing critical raw minerals. So renewable energy, mobility, technologies, all have to look and have them in their supply chain. And that is something that investors can push a lot through. So we don't call it dialogue, we call it engagement in the asset management world. That is something that is very, very important to us, the engagement and stewardship that we have with companies that we invest in or wish to invest in. And we are always pushing them to go further in terms of what they can do in ESG. And notably in the last few years, it's been pushing on transparency through the supply chain, notably linked to a few controversies that have happened. And that's where IRMA is something that we push through, is because it helps to have that transparency. And of course, as an investor, we're only allowed what's public. So having that full 194 pages report, assessment scorecard, and having to see also where a company can evolve is always really important for us as investors, to help us understand where are the risks, where is the company improving, but also due to the fact that they have to renew their scores in the future. It also helps as an investor to see the progression of the company. I know it's not always easy to put it into a quantitative matter or even qualitative, but having that scorecard, seeing the action plans put in place, definitely helps us as investors to be able to have that better dialogue, kind of how Stefan mentioned with SQ and with communities. We also are enabled to have better pinpoint where we have to have that engagement with companies, either down their supply chain if they're purchasers or with the extractive sector. But I think also investors need to push in different ways, and that's also why we joined IRMA when they were revising their standard, the 2.0. It's also the role of investors to shape the norms and the best practices by participating in this different initiative. So it's important to us to also raise our voice and, of course, keep pushing for more transparency, more disclosure, and to cover, of course, and that's what we appreciate about IRMA, that it covers ESG, which is sometimes a little bit forgotten, the governance, that last letter within the sustainability world. So that's what I think investors can play a part in, really continue to push, continue to see it, continue to see that transparency through different engagement and stewardship.
Thank you. I think as I've listened to you all share your perspectives, two themes have come out. So Petra, I believe that you said it with auditing fatigue and making sure that you are finding the right framework and the right way to find the level of transparency and accountability that you need as a company when you're looking at your upstream suppliers. And I think that again is one of those benefits of IRMA is that thoroughness. And we do that because we do a lot of collaborations. IRMA isn't just a standalone framework that was just, or standard that was just built kind of in a corner by itself. It really was built over time with the inputs from so many different groups, so many other global frameworks, other standards, to really ensure that it encompassed and it housed the right information that everyone could agree on, that all 6 houses could agree on. And the other piece that keeps coming up is that piece around dialogue. So Stefan, I'm going to come back to you because being with SQM and being in the mining house, you have a very different interaction with the IRMA standard than the rest of the houses do, because as the mining sector, you are implementing this standard. So you are putting the work in on the ground to really make sure that the IRMA standard is implemented in an effective way that brings out that transparency. And as we continue to talk about dialogue, I think one thing that we often see is that dialogue actually just really kicks off and begins when your audit report is released. It all of a sudden you have put this public information out on the markets now that people can now digest, they can go through, they can look at, and it really is not the end of the dialogue. It's not an end result, but it really is the continuation of dialogue with an IRMA report going public. And so where SQM is right now in your own IRMA journey and IRMA process, can you speak a bit about how that dialogue has helped shape decisions that SQM has made about your Chilean operation and how this continued dialogue benefits your operation?
Yeah, things are moving very fast in Chile. We are in advanced discussion through Codelco with the Chilean state to partner up for the future operation for the concession after 2030. This involves indigenous consultations and a lot of new ideas being incorporated. So for the future operation to continue to reduce the impact, ultimately trying not to use any more water in the basin, reinject more brine. So a lot of things are ongoing. What I think is so fundamental is that as you have the audit in place and you have kind of institutionalized and documentation processes, working groups. We have now more environmental working groups with different communities than before the audit, which brings the communities into the monitoring so they can also trust the results of the environmental monitoring system. But then you have really a more intense dialogue and a dialogue where I think people are listening to each other better, are understanding each other better, because sometimes we both speak Spanish, but the meaning that we attach to the same word is different. So these are, I think, pitfalls which are very important to detect. But so I'll give you a very concrete example. So in the innovation roadmap that we had published a couple of years ago, how we thought we could continue to improve and reduce the footprint and the impact of the operation. There were 4 pillars, 4 components of different technologies in that roadmap. And one of them was to potentially bring seawater to the basin, desalinate that seawater, make that fresh water, desalinated seawater available to the basin to further contribute to the hydrological balance in the basin. And we thought it was a fantastic idea. We thought, oh, wow, we're really making it happen. And so we went through the dialogue with indigenous communities and we spoke to experts on the ground as well. And so their feedback was that they actually thought that this was not a great idea because potentially we could be bringing microorganisms which are foreign to the salar into the specific ecosystem in the salar. And so we have taken out that 4th pillar. And so we're focusing now on the other 3 pillars and we're continuing the dialogue and informing the indigenous communities. Summer next year, we will then submit this into the start of the environmental assessment process. to see to go through the whole permitting process, which takes, well, several years, 3, 5, 7 years in Chile. But we are already informing and bringing up to speed our communities more than 1 year in advance on the permit, so that they understand what we have in mind. We continue the dialogue, and then once the formal process is started, they can hit the ground running, and again aiming towards this horizontality ambition. So that is, I think it's a very good example where, I mean, I cannot strictly attribute this to IRMA, but I can't help feeling that the level of trust in the dialogue may not have been there without IRMA, and maybe we wouldn't have gotten the feedback, and then we would have gotten a lot more questions and negative feelings about it later on. So you can do things in advance, and it's always more easy to do it in advance. You do have to make the commitment, take the time, and allocate, of course, all the resources. But it's better to do it in advance than to do it later, because when you do it later, then you're trying to solve problems which you could have avoided before the problem occurred. So, yeah.
It's really seeing the standard as both an opportunity to use it as a due diligence tool, which we heard from Camille and Petra, but also from that risk management and assessment tool as well when it comes to operations, and really getting that foresight on what could come down the line, checking your assumptions as a company and using it in a really effective way. I do think between Thea and Camille and Petra and Stefan, even what you just shared, there has been a lot of conversations around Indigenous rights, and that understanding that IRMA provides a level through its FPIC chapter of transparency and accountability when it comes to free, prior, and informed consent. And that is something that is really unique to the IRMA standard. There are not other standards that go to the level of depth and expectation on companies when it comes to FPIC and honoring FPIC. And so, Pavel, I want to bring that back to you as well. Hearing these other panelists speak about the importance of Indigenous rights and perspectives from the roles that they hold, whether it be within the private sector or within the CSO and NGO space, what do you think that companies or these downstream purchasers or investors at this point need to really look for and understand when it comes to Indigenous rights, and how does IRMA really help support them accessing that information?
Ну, я думаю, что это, ну, опять же повторюсь, да, что это очень здорово, что на площадке IRMA объединяет всех стейкхолдеров, в том числе, вот как уже было сказано, не только вот коренные народы и вот горнодобывающий сектор, но и другие виды бизнеса, которые потребляют, да, продукцию горной добычи. И, например, для общин коренных народов также очень важно вести этот диалог с банками, с финансовыми институтами, с автомобильным, чтобы мы могли донести свою позицию до вот, потребителей горной добычи. И я думаю, что когда представители вот, автомобильных компаний, представители финансового сектора будут смотреть на то, что делает представители горной добычи, я думаю, что как раз из диалога, который складывается, да, между общинами коренных народов и вот представителями вот, финансового сектора там, или автомобильных, они могут получать достоверную информацию. Я очень надеюсь, да, что компании, которые ведут себя недобросовестно, я имею в виду компании горной добычи, да, которые обманывают, их будет становиться все меньше, но они пока, к сожалению, еще есть. Да. И поэтому я думаю, что когда вот, финансовый сектор, да, или автомобильный сектор будут смотреть на то, что делает компания по горной добыче, она в первую очередь должна узнать, как эта компания работает с коренными народами. И, конечно же, было бы очень важно, чтобы представители этого сектора могли напрямую говорить с общинами, с представителями коренных народов. Я могу сказать, что у нашей организации есть большой опыт, когда мы для того, чтобы заставить представителей вот, горнодобывающего сектора соблюдать права коренных народов, мы обращались к их инвесторам и к акционерам. И могу сказать, что у нас есть ряд историй, которые положительные, да, когда инвесторы и акционеры прислушались к нам и начали давить на эту компанию с тем, чтобы компания вела честный, открытый диалог и вот то, что Стефан сказал, да, соблюдал вот те права коренных народов, которые необходимо соблюдать. Я хотел бы еще раз подчеркнуть, да, особенно, наверное, в первую очередь к представителям сектора горной добычи, что
Probably
честный диалог, он очень важен. Пусть он будет сложным,
it's
пусть он
most
будет
important
тяжелым, но он очень
for
важен,
the
потому
mining
что
sector.
доверие в таких
An open
переговорах
dialogue
играет
is
очень важную роль.
very important for
Потому
communities,
что
and it can be
когда
very
нет
complex
доверия,
and
да, когда
difficult,
одна из
unfortunately,
сторон
and lengthy.
пытается обмануть,
But
то тогда
it is an essential pillar of all mining processes that we are looking for.
другая сторона, да, компания, да, положительные вещи, не будет доверия, тогда я считаю, что важно
And
честный, открытый
we
диалог.
would like to see companies be honest and not pushy when it comes to this dialogue, and not try to speed up the process when it is not possible to do so, but listen to the communities and speak with us as equals. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavel. We do have a question from one of the participants who's listening around community engagement and looking at if the IRMA reports are long and are technical and are robust. How are companies ensuring that the information is getting shared back with communities in a way that makes sense, in a way that's accessible to them? And so maybe, Stefan, I will ask you this question for how you were able to disseminate the information from the SQM reports back to your stakeholders and communities to ensure that they had the right information and were able to engage with the report. Oh, you're on mute, Stefan.
Sorry about that. So first of all, the engagement happens already during the audit. So you have human rights impact assessment, you have human rights due diligence, so you interview stakeholders, that includes our own workers. Then the audit forces you to even have more dialogue. So, for instance, to engage on emergency response programs with the surrounding communities. That creates a dialogue with the people at the community that are responsible for that, and then you document and you formalize that. After the audit, obviously the report is public. It's completely public. So for each individual criteria, there is the assessment of the auditor and where the company performs, then with the score and the overview table. The audit report is available in multiple languages. And then, of course, once the audit becomes public, we have dialogue with all the different communities to discuss it. Is part of that dialogue, which is anyway already there. And as I said before, I think it really helps to show to communities, hey, we are maybe concerned about 10 things. Actually, the audit report shows that 4 of those are actually up to the highest standard and seem to be covered. Okay, then you have to talk more about the other 6. Doesn't mean you have to stop talking about the other 4, but you can move to those other 6. I think also there has been a lot of learning with the audits in Salar de Atacama, both of the other lithium company that is operating there and SQM. And so I have actually had the chance to be part of a workshop with local communities where they asked questions about the audit, and we were trying to also see how can we improve the communication on the audit, how can we better work to involve more communities. I think often communities, from the long experience they have with industry, they think that audits are checkpoints, and that is just do the audit and move on. And this is, I think, a fundamental difference of IRMA compared to other standards, is that it's not something that is do the check and then move on. No, it's something that is do the check, there is an action plan, there is then surveillance audits, and you audit again. And so it's a continuous process. And so it also shows to local people that your commitment as a mining company is genuine. And I think it reduces for them the perceived risk of mining companies just doing the check exercise and then focus again on other things. So it institutionalizes the process of transparency and accountability and dialogue and engagement.
Thank you. And I'll just add on to that piece that at IRMA, our teams internally also continuously look for ways that we can build tools that make the information of reports more accessible. So whether that be flyers, whether that be working with the communities around a mine that has gone through an audit and understanding what the key topics are that are most relevant to them, how can we pull out that information out of reports? How can we make ensure that it is digestible and easily understood? So we do a lot of that work internally as well to make sure that that information is shared in appropriate ways with all affected communities and stakeholders of the mine. So I know that we have just a few minutes left. And so I wanted to give each of you panelists just 2 minutes to share any final or closing remarks around the benefits that you see with IRMA before we wrap up. And so Thea, I will come to you for your final thoughts.
Thanks, Beth. I think I just want to reflect on the fact that these are very complex environments that we're working in and very complex supply chains. And I think that can be quite daunting, and a lot of kind of processes and reporting that companies have to go through. But the IRMA process really starts at addressing the core issues that are in those supply chains and opening that dialogue to start with. The fact that IRMA is not a pass-fail process, but it is this score out of 100 shows that the companies that are a part of IRMA are open to that continuous improvement, and that is what's needed, as is engagement from all stakeholders across the extractives industry, and true consultation with communities and civil society.
Thank you. Camille.
I think I'll just add on to what has been said, and I think maybe an interesting point of view for an investor is that IRMA is on the site, the mining aspect scope, whereas usually as an investor, and notably for ESG reports, we only look at more of the company level. And that way, sometimes there can be policies, but we don't always see how it's applied to the mining level. So having both that assessment on the mining side and an ESG report enables us to ensure what the company is saying at the top is actually being applied back on site. So it does give us also that second layer of assurance in some sort of way of the right action is taking place. And I think the second part that is the most interesting to us is that it covers all of the E, S, and G aspect, kind of what we mentioned, of everything that is very important to us, both going to human rights, community, carbon footprint, biodiversity, also quite a big thing, grievance mechanism, and everything is public in the end, which really helps us as investors in going back to that key word that keep being said, dialogue, or just engagement for us investors, really enables us to understand better this hard to abate sector. It is also for a responsible investor to invest in sectors that is a little bit harder to assess how they're evolving. It is a reputation also, so it enables us to really have that confidence that they are showing evolutions, that we know where they're doing well and where we can continue discussing with them, again, dialogue, engagement, stewardship with those companies to keep going forward, see those evolutions in different aspects of where they can get better and continue on that journey.
Pavel, any final thoughts from yourself?
Ну, я хотел бы сказать, что Что для
Yes,
меня,
I would
да,
like to say
является
that
очень
for
важным
me,
IRMA, ну, первое, как я уже
what
сказал,
is
да, это
most important in
возможность, чтобы
IRMA,
голос коренных
it
народов
is
был слышен,
first of all,
возможность ведения
the
диалога с разными
possibility
стейкхолдерами, и,
of
конечно же, я
indigenous
думаю, что
communities to
для
be
нас, для
heard,
коренных народов,
of those affected communities
важнейшим является
that,
то, что ИРМА
but
полностью признает
also
принцип
for
свободного
us,
предварительного и охотнего
it's
согласия. То есть
incredibly important
нас является
that
это
IRMA,
таким
in their
краеугольным
standards,
камнем в работе ИРМА,
completely
и мы сейчас поддерживаем и
recognizes
будем
free, prior, and
тоже
informed
продвигать.
consent.
Спасибо.
And for us, this is the cornerstone of all discussions and all possibilities that our communities have in terms of their rights, which came about on the international level. Thank you.
Thank you. Petra.
Yeah, well, mining is, as I said, a high-risk sector for us, and we really want to help drive that change to make it less risky. And IRMA is a really transparent and good tool that can help us drive that change. So we realize that making audits is the first step. We need to convince more mining companies to do the audits. But then if they're as transparent as IRMA is, we as downstream companies and end purchasers, we can actually have those audit reports and assess fundamental principles of human rights and environmental management in our supply chain. That really helps us. And we realize that there might be gaps in the audit reports, but then the management of IRMA is really transparent and the protocol. So it's all about driving that change, working on corrective action plans jointly within the industry that we really appreciate. And the expertise of the whole program with all the stakeholder consultation that is really, really credible for us.
Thank you. And Stefan, I started with you and I will end with you for your final thoughts for the panel.
So the honor, I think from my side, beside everything that I've said on the operational level and the engagement with stakeholders and indigenous communities, I think it's really a privilege to be part of IRMA. We came on, I think, a couple of years ago, and we finished our audit, and we were already engaging for before. But it seems the expertise that Petra mentioned seems like a process that really works. We have very often difference of opinions, but the process really works to foster the dialogue and to try to build bridges and to facilitate and create understanding. And I think that's really fantastic because it's only together that we can make things better. And ultimately, thanks to this dialogue, we as a company become better. And Pavel has said it's sometimes lengthy, it's difficult, but as a company, I think you always have to keep in mind that you become a better company as a result. So actually, it's positive. And I bring this back that if you see it as a checkbox, people are going to see through that, and your dialogue and your engagement is not is going to be effective or adequate. So that is something very unique, I think.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today. We do look forward to, from the IRMA side, continuing to keep everyone updated. As Camille mentioned, we do have our standard 2.0 that is in the works right now, which is a continuous improvement for IRMA on our own standard to ensure that we are continuing to promote best practice and continuing to have equal voice in how our standard is developed. Again, we are a standard that is made for and by the 6 houses that make up IRMA. And so to learn more about that, sign up for our newsletter, follow us online, and we look forward to be able to sharing that. And so just a thank you to our panelists and to the World Resource Forum for allowing this conversation to happen today. And I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your weeks. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.